Millions of views, game theory videos, Minecraft spin-offs, the list goes on. Where did it go wrong?
What are you doing?
I can't fully comprehend how Hello Neighbor messed everything up so badly. They had it all. Even studios like Bethesda and Activision would be jealous of how much they had going for them. Where did it all go wrong?
Well, everyone knows where it all went wrong. The game was bad at release.
Yes, but what if I could change it? Go back and redesign the game.
There's nothing you can do now, but what if you went back in time and started from scratch? Lucky for you, I have this time-traveling ball pit. I'm not using it for anything. Give it your best shot.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Alright, here we go. Well, Tiny Build, while the intro might make you think I'm MatPat, I assure you, I am not. But don't worry, I will definitely enjoy making this video. Now, if you've watched my Which Franchise Killed the Mascot Horror Genre video, you will know that I was once a super fan of Hello Neighbor and loved what this franchise was doing. It was a dream watching my favorite creators play the alphas and seeing the theories from MatPat and other YouTubers. Sadly, the joy and happiness didn't stay for long. When the entire game was released, cracks started to form and many lost their love for the franchise. Now, games like Hello Neighbor 2, Hello Guest, Hello Engineer, and more have been released, but things haven't improved. So instead of complaining and whining about how things are now, I will take a trip back in time to host an intervention for this franchise. So put on your hard hats and let's get building. Now, what's the standard process for making a game? Where do we begin? According to online sources, these are the foundational questions for making a video game. What is the idea or concept? What genre? What are the story and characters? How about the art style? What is the level and world design? Don't forget game mechanics. And last but not least, monetization strategy. These are some of the questions studios have to answer when making a video game. At least, that's what Google says, and I don't make games, so let's just hop into it. The first category I want to tackle is genre. There is nothing to change here. I am not turning Hello Neighbor into a Call of Duty first-person shooter or a 2D platformer, so I won't change too much there. The next category is the idea or concept, which I will also not change too much. The concept of breaking into your neighbor's house and solving a bunch of mini puzzles made this game appealing to millions. Taking away this game's selling point nearly guarantees an early grave for this franchise. However, I would tweak a few things under the Hello Neighbor hood. Something that intrigued me in the early stages of the Hello Neighbor hype was the neighbor's AI that learned from the player's patterns. The neighbor was supposed to learn from the various routes and hiding spots that the player uses in their playthrough. Tiny Build even uploaded a video titled Hello Neighbor AI Rundown. In this video, they explain the different modes the neighbor uses throughout the game. Idle mode is when the neighbor is just existing and doing his chores. Offline mode is when the neighbor is setting traps. Hunt mode is when the neighbor is searching for the player. And attack mode is when he's actively pursuing the player. One minor change I would make is to the neighbor's offline mode. During my playthroughs of Hello Neighbor, the neighbor would start to set traps in different windows and doorways that I had used to invade his privacy. This is a good thing, but if I started to struggle and kept dying, the game would just become flooded with traps. For example, the doorway into the neighbor's house in Act 2 was just covered in bear traps and cameras. What made this worse was that the neighbor started to develop a path where he would just walk back and forth in that front area. It became a chore to just throw items at his face to try and lure him away from that loop. So the change I am making is that traps set by the neighbor will start to despawn as more are placed. Maybe the neighbor picks up a trap and then sets it elsewhere, and that's how they keep the amount balanced. But trust me when I tell you, it can sometimes get overwhelming. Another minor change I would make is to the neighbor's hiding spot detection system. While you're hiding from the neighbor, you have a few choices. You can hide under a bed, in a wardrobe, or just run back to the safety of your home. The risky choice is to hide in the house, and according to Tiny Build, the less you hide in a spot, the lower the chance that the neighbor will check there. Well, in my playthroughs, it felt like he would find me no matter where I hid. And I might be onto something, because in Tiny Build's video explaining the neighbor's AI, he checks a hiding spot that has a 0% next to it. I thought the neighbor would check hiding spots more frequently once the player started using them. I want to preface that I might be misunderstanding the video here, but I still find it weird that the 0% is right there and the neighbor then just checks the spot. Aside from those minor things, the general idea and concept of the game is solid, with a few minor tweaks in the neighbor's behavior. The next category is the art style. Now, I'm going to protect this with my life. Hello Neighbor's art style is unique to this game, and I love it. If you're scrolling through YouTube and you see a Hello Neighbor thumbnail, you will recognize it because of how different it is from everything else. Tiny Build and everyone who worked on this made the right call here, and there is no debating it. So we will leave that one untouched. Now it's time to talk about level and world design. Depending on how you feel about the story and characters, this might be the most important or second most important category. So, how do I feel about the level design in Hello Neighbor? I'm torn. the first act of Hello Neighbor is a great way to introduce the player to the mechanics of the neighbor and how to navigate the house properly. Keys, key cards, power switches, and lockpicks are different mechanics the game teaches us how to use in the first act. There's nothing major for me to criticize about this level. It gets the job done. However, the second act is the complete opposite. This act puts the player in a much more confined area with an interesting twist. Instead of getting into the neighbor's basement, we are now trying to get out. Sadly, the premise is a lot cooler than the execution. This act feels very claustrophobic and can get extremely frustrating. As a result of the smaller playable area, you always feel like the neighbor is breathing down your back or chasing you 24/7. But, and this is a massive but, you will completely lose the neighbor once you start making progress toward escaping. If that doesn't make sense, here's the super simple breakdown. Act 2 begins with you playing as a kid trying to escape from the neighbor's house. Once a ghostly cutout of a child unlocks the door, it's a quick sprint through some vents and you climb out of the basement. Your emergence from the basement will become the new starting point after you die while playing Act 2. The easiest and most logical way to escape this level is by becoming a hydraulic engineer and redirecting water to many different places throughout the house. Using a red valve, you will redirect water from the upstairs lake to an empty area in the house so you can freeze it. Once frozen, you can cross that ice to grab the red key to escape. So that's how you can escape. The main issue with this level and the system you use to progress is that it can be difficult for a first-time player to find all the valves, and even more difficult, know what to do. But looking beyond that, the player has to move vertically throughout the level to progress. This causes an issue because when you play the level, you notice that the neighbor doesn't even register as a threat in these areas. He's stuck touring the yard and the first floor, and you have complete free reign over the rest of the house. Yes, there is a ladder which he can take to reach a lot of these areas, but he only goes upstairs if you are way too loud or he's in hot pursuit. It's not like in Act 1 where he can naturally get close to you, which makes Hello Neighbor fun. You're breaking into a random guy's house, and it would be natural for you to disappear like a chameleon while he's just living his life. Checking out what's in his fridge? Well, too bad, because he just got hungry. So now you must run like Usain Bolt for some cover to hide. Sadly, these natural interactions don't occur as often within Act 2, and it feels like anytime you see the neighbor, it's because you're on the first floor. So, what would I do if I was to redesign the level? First, remove some of these water valves or add a map the player can access. This map would give a rough sketch of where the valves are and the general idea of their role in escaping. It doesn't have to explain how the furnace works, but I want every player to understand better why these valves mean so much and how they work. The other option, of course, is to remove some of these valves that are in more obscure places. The next change I would add to the level is the ability for a neighbor hatch. This hatch is upstairs, and if you make enough noise, he will open it and appear to chase the player. From here, you'll either get caught or have to avoid capture quickly. After the chase, the neighbor can either chill upstairs or go back down through his hatch and teleport to the one downstairs. The hatch also can be used by the neighbor whenever he wants. This would allow him to move upstairs and place cameras or traps to prevent the player from progressing. Moving on to Chapter 3, things become very different. The house grows in size, and entering the basement becomes complicated. Now, the player has to complete fear room scenarios to gain new abilities to complete the act. The player gets 3 abilities: crouch invisibility, double jump, and you can break free from the neighbor once. These abilities are cool and important in finishing this act, but I don't entirely understand them. The player only needs the invisible crouch and double jump because the rest of the game is designed with those features in mind. If it was up to me, breaking free from the neighbor would not exist. I feel it removes the punishment of being caught by the neighbor. On the contrary, I don't mind the crouched invisibility and would keep it in my version. But I have mixed thoughts about this third upgrade. Double jumping is always a helpful mechanic and can add a new layer to the game's level design, but does it make sense within Hello Neighbor? In my rebuild, I would consider an upgrade that gives the player a shoulder bash ability. Now, the player can break down doors with chairs blocking them using a shoulder bash. Of course, this can create noise and alert the neighbor to the player's presence if he's close enough. So I would prefer the shoulder bash ability over the escape ability. Double jump is more of a toss-up, and I will let the comments section decide on it. So I'm supposed to talk about Act 4 next, but this level serves as a final boss fight. This means it's a great time to explain my changes to the Hello Neighbor story. Mr. Peterson was living the perfect life. He had a great job, a perfect marriage, and 2 amazing children, 1 daughter and 1 son. However, one day there was a horrible car accident. His children were pronounced dead at the scene by first responders, but his wife made it to the hospital and was on life support. Desperate, Mr. Peterson was looking for anything to save his love. Ravenbrooks was a town filled with scary myths and even scarier people. So, Mr. Peterson turned to a medium who told him the tale of the Thing, a being that would grant 1 wish, but the price was a lifetime of servitude. Mr. Peterson was desperate for anything and began researching for anything that mentioned the Thing and how to communicate with him. He searched for books, websites, articles, and anything mentioning the Thing. One night, the Thing visits him in a dream. The Thing asks Mr. Peterson why he had been looking for him and what he wanted. Mr. Peterson, full of tears, begs the Thing to save his wife and kids, to put his family back together. The Thing agrees, but warns Mr. Peterson that there is a cost. Now, on his hands and knees, Mr. Peterson shoots it down, yelling that it's unimportant. He just wants them back. So, the Thing snaps his fingers, and Mr. Peterson wakes up in the hospital beside his wife. It takes him a few seconds to fully awake, but then he hears the dreaded tone, the sound of the heart monitor flatlining. His wife was dead. Nurses rushed in, attempting to resuscitate her, but nothing worked. She was gone. Mr. Peterson was in shock. The Thing was supposed to save his wife, not murder her. It was that night in a dream when he got his answer. The Thing presented him with his family, but they were different. They were cardboard cutouts. Yes, they possessed the spirits of his wife, son, and daughter, but they were cardboard cutouts. The Thing then explained the price to Mr. Peterson. Since Mr. Peterson got to have his family back, he would have to break others. The pain he experienced of losing someone he loved, he would have to inflict that feeling on countless other families. And so it began. Mr. Peterson started kidnapping children and locking them in his basement. The Thing would then take them. Mr. Peterson never knew what he did with them, but it was because he didn't want to know. One day, a young boy named Nicky heard the screams of Mr. Peterson's victim. As is natural for a young boy, his curiosity got the better. He peeked through the window and saw Mr. Peterson pushing his victim back into the basement. Nicky, filled with the urge to do something right, tried to free that child. This is what we play in Act 1. Then, Nicky gets kidnapped and his attempt to escape becomes Act 2. Now Act 3 is where things deviate. When Nicky arrives at his childhood home, he sees the Thing appearing all around his house. Then, in a near jump scare, the Thing touches Nicky's forehead and he drops down into a deep sleep. That deep sleep is what we play through in Act 3. Throughout Act 3, clues about who the Thing is, what the cardboard cutouts are, and rare Easter eggs where the text, "The one who got away," can appear around the house. Act 3 ends with the player entering the basement and beginning Act 4, the final battle. Act 4 has always been a toss-up for me. In my first playthrough, I had no idea what I was doing. I was as lost and confused as you could be. However, I've played the boss fight a few times since then and started to appreciate it more. It's a complete mix of all the weird and intricate things that make up Hello Neighbor. I won't change it, or at least the first phase. The second phase of the boss fight requires the players to defend their younger selves from the Thing. This is where I make my change. Between phases 1 and 2 of the boss fight, a cutscene will play of a much older Mr. Peterson returning to the ruins of his house. While there, he sees the door to Nicky's house open and a car left running. He moves to the house and knocks on the door, but there's no response. Then he slightly pushes the door open and sees Nicky asleep on the floor. Mr. Peterson gasps and moves to help him up, but once he touches him, his mind becomes linked to Nicky's. The point of view changes back to Nicky, but now as a child. Here, he sees the Thing and starts to back away from him, but as he's backing away, he starts to shrink down and become a younger version of himself. He starts to cry and back away, but suddenly, someone knocks the Thing over and he disappears. Now, things go back to the original phase 2 of this boss battle, but if the player looks at their hands or who they are in a passing mirror, they are now Mr. Peterson. The player then has to stand in front of younger versions of Nicky to protect him from the Thing. As they keep doing this, they grow larger and larger until they tower over him. Then a cutscene plays where a giant Mr. Peterson grabs the Thing by his shoulders and just headbutts him. The screen goes white and a cutscene begins of Mr. Peterson waking up next to Nicky in his house. Mr. Peterson sees Nicky still sleeping and taps him on the shoulder trying to wake him up. Once Nicky wakes up, he realizes who woke him up. He grabs the closest item, a loose book, and hits Mr. Peterson in the head with it. Mr. Peterson, realizing that he's unwelcome, runs out the door and down the street. Nicky pulls out his phone to presumably call the authorities, but the camera pans towards the ruins of the Petersons' home. Here, you can see 3 cardboard cutouts. A wife, a daughter, and a son start to dissolve away. So, some of you may like or dislike my new story for Hello Neighbor. However, the more important question is, why did I change it? It begins in Act 3, because that's when the story starts to go a bit off the rails. The first 2 acts are very straightforward. We break into Mr. Peterson's home to save someone, but end up trapped, and then Act 2 is us trying to escape. In contrast, Acts 3 and 4 don't occur in the real world, but in Nicky's mind. The main issue I have with this is that it's not, how do I say this? It's not interesting. This isn't to say that the original story was garbage or awful, but it had so much more potential. In the alphas, it was teased that the neighbor could be working for some evil force. There could have been a whole other villain that played a larger role in the Hello Neighbor game, but instead that other villain was just fear. This fear manifested itself in Nicky's dreams and was what he defeated in the final battle. That's cool, but it's not even close to a satisfying result. You set up all these Easter eggs and lore hints in the alphas, and Spooky Fear Man is supposed to make the fans happy. happy, Dynamic Pixels should have just pulled a Scott Cawthon and moved on from Dream Theory altogether. Additionally, I'm not the only one to feel this way. MatPat has stated in multiple videos that the final story Hello Neighbor decided to go with didn't make sense and wasn't satisfying with what they had teased. So that's why I had to make some changes to the story. Looking at my list of categories, we only have 2 left: game mechanics and monetization strategy. The first category I want to cross off immediately is game mechanics. I love finding all the keys, using the magnets, flipping switches, stacking boxes, and pressing buttons. I love all of it. Dear viewer, you don't need to worry about me messing with that. You can worry though about how I approach the Hello Neighbor monetization strategy and lifecycle. This isn't to say I think they should charge more for the game. $29.99 seems a bit steep. You could theoretically buy all the Garten of Banban games for that price, but what if I could make it worth it? Introducing Hello Builder. This mode within Hello Neighbor would allow people to build their own houses. Players can set up a basement and build around it with different locks, doors, tools, and anything they can dream of. It would resemble the build mode within the Roblox game Piggy. Players can make their own levels, play with friends, or share them publicly on the Hello Neighbor servers. TinyBuild could promote these with a build of the week or featured playlist. This isn't even mentioning the amount of content this would bring content creators, because earlier in Hello Neighbor's lifecycle, everyone was dying to make some form of Hello Neighbor themed content because it got views. If you're TinyBuild, let the fans do some of the work for you. Sure, you release the main acts and it's the center focus of the game, but this hypothetical mode could make maintaining a fan base easier. Then experiences like Hello Guest and Hide and Seek are released as free add-ons to the game. Fans get excited, play what you release, play what other fans release, and then Hello Neighbor 2 releases with revamped graphics, and you can charge your fans $29.99 to do it all over again.